time to welcome you guys. And I thought I had something clever to say this time instead of good morning, but I can't think of it. Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to another Saturday session of, no, that's a different game show. Today, I thought we should discuss what's hard, what's easy, and why do we care? And one of the reasons I thought we should discuss it is because I've discussed it many times and enjoyed talking about it and seeing what people think. So first of all, I think we probably all agree, there may be one or two that don't, that dancer success is important. As Jim Mayo once said many decades ago, dancers like to be challenged, but win. They actually like variety. If they can't dance what you're calling, or for some reason are having troubles, they're not going to have fun. If they don't have fun, they're not going to want to come back. They're not going to like you. They're definitely not want to come back to your dances. And that's not, our goal is to feed our egos by having them come back, and for the professional callers to feed our purses. But so a lot of people, a lot of callers over the years have given some really good talks about what makes things easy and what makes things hard. And they've gotten into a lot of detail that I've agreed with, but don't necessarily find useful. And I've come up with an idea many years ago that may help people on their quest, callers on their quest to control the degree of difficulty of a dance. Difficulty is independent of what program you're calling, whether it's basic, mainstream, advanced, challenge. And looks like we're keeping you awake, Jeffrey. We're trying. I know it's pretty late where you are, or early already in the morning. Actually, I'm trying to keep me awake also, Jeffrey, because prepping this thing, I'll mention it later, but took longer than I thought. I was up till 2:30 last night, and that's my thing, not my thing, rather. And we know that a lot of things can make dancers have problems. Here's a list of things that make things difficult. And this is not what I'm aiming at, but it's, common for information or not, standard sex arrangement or not. The acoustics in the hall can make a difference whether they can get through. The dancer experience, how tired the dancers are. I guess we can say how tired the callers are too. Whether the floor is slippery or not, whether it's left-handed or right-handed, and they're not used to that stuff. Body flow can throw people off. Callers' enunciation, so they can't dance. A dancer familiarity with the calls. You take a strong plus dancer and send them into an A1 hall, and they're going to have a little bit of trouble. Tempo of the music, how fast they have to walk, how fast they have to think, etc. How full the moon is. I don't think that's a thing, but some people have thought so. It turns out that if you eliminate all of those things, good timing, good body flow, good conditions of enunciation and acoustics and everything, make sure you stick to the level, and dancers are reasonably experienced, that there's still a spectrum of easy, very easy, standard, really hard choreography. There's a spectrum there. And an experienced caller can control that so that he can move up and down that spectrum and do what I was saying earlier, keep the dancers thinking they're challenged and winning most of the time. Keep them challenged, basically keep them entertained at the edge of their level, but getting dancer success with that. But it takes a lot of experience to get to that point where you can control that. And again, doing that without bad choreography, just by the pure nature of the fact that some choreography is more difficult than others. And what I found, and hope to convince you guys, be you experienced or not experienced, that callers have the innate ability to understand whether things are difficult or not. If you see a piece of choreography, you can generally tell, ooh, that's kind of hard to do. Or, boy, that's pretty basic. I'd probably use that in class. Now, whether you can control that or not is a different subject. That's something you got to work towards. But everybody, I'd say almost everybody, has the ability to judge that. So what I'm going to do, I've done this with live dancers before. I'm going to do it with cam nations, and I don't think it's as effective, but I've done it with live dancers. I've got a series of sequences that go anywhere from class level to typical club level, you know, what you'd call in a typical club, not necessarily your own because you can know where they are, but if you go out to do a guest calling tip or number somewhere, to a club that you know really needs to be pushed or likes to be pushed and is capable of most of that. I've got a bunch of sequences, and I'm going to run through them one at a time, or some of them anyway, with caminations. And I'll have to figure out, working with you guys, whether we should talk about them or read them first, or go through them quickly, or let them dance really slowly so we can let us absorb what's going on. And then you're going to decide on a basis of 1 to 10, excuse me, 1 to 5 is what I've decided on, whether these are easy, medium, or let's say class level, club level, or go-go dancers with a couple of notches in between. That's why I've chosen 5. I've done this in some groups with choosing 10, and it's too confusing. I've done it with 3, and it doesn't give enough leeway as to what's going on. So once we go through one of these series, you're going to open chat, and you're going to aim that chat at Dan. And I hope Dan remembers that I asked him if he would do this for me. Forgot to review it with you. And you're going to put a number. Actually, you're going to put 2 numbers. One is the number of the sequence. I'll repeat that number frequently. And I might go in order, or I might jump around, but put the number of the sequence, and then put your 1 to 5 as to how difficult you think this, or how easy you think this sequence is. And then Dan will average them out and probably hopefully tell us. And there's usually a pretty good cluster. People, whether they have lots of experience as a caller or are brand new to calling, people have a good feel for what this is. My contention, we're going to prove or disprove my theory here that you've got it within you, which is the first step, recognizing it before being able to control it. He's going to tell us probably where the peak of the bell curve is, and what the high end and what the low end is. And then we'll find out who did the low end, and we'll go pick on them. No, but maybe we'll discuss what makes things go that way or not. Anyway, with that, I am going to, oh, Dan, did you allow me to share screen yet? I didn't check, but I assume you haven't, and it says host disabled here.
Try it again now, if you would.
Okay. And this is the one I want to share. our friends Taminations. Let me adjust my Zoom so I can see some of you. And let me adjust my list of calls, sequences. So, copy, paste. I better close this up a little so I can see beyond that. I've had these lists of sequences for a long time. I haven't really, except for one or two, created them, and a few I've changed. They're mostly, I tried for mostly mainstream, but there's one plus call that used to be mainstream that's used quite a bit, and that's in these sequences, and that's fan the top. And I think one of the sequences has anything and roll in it. And also, I've had to change a lot of things, like, because into Tamination speak, and that's what took me a long time. It's amazing how different that was, or how much time that took. Such things as I used to include partner tag, but now it's face that person and step to a wave, or because it doesn't know step to wave, touch, or a variety of other ways I've done those. Anyway, the first sequence, I'm going to read through it. You can read through it too. Heads pass through, centers, heads pass through, then separate around one to a line, star through, double pass through, the leaders partner trade, everyone swing through, boys run, Ferris wheel, centers square through 3/4. And I put Alaman left in parentheses here because we're not going to dance it, but you know that supposedly that's there. And I thought for convenience on this exercise, I would just change the colors of the boys versus the girls, because that's the part that's important to see. And we will not care about who goes where. Now, I frequently forget this, but do we have anybody that's colorblind that can't distinguish this blue from the green? If so, I'll switch them to another color. Okay, some groups we have, so I just want to be sensitive to that for a change. I'm going to dance this through very quickly so you get a feel for the body flow. And it's too quick for me to call what's going on at the same time. And there we are, and hopefully everybody's facing their, facing their corners. And sure enough, they are. So let's go back to this and let's redance it at a slow, boring rate. And I'm gonna try to call through at the same time. So we're gonna start with the heads pass through. Anytime now, heads. Separate around one to a line. Everybody star through and do a double pass through. Those in the lead do a partner trade. Everybody swing through. Now the boys run. Do a Ferris wheel. And the centers square through 3/4 once you finish the Ferris wheel. So on a scale of 1 to 10, excuse me, 1 to 5, here we go again. With 1 being the easiest and 5 being the most difficult. Tell Dan what you think. Again, sequence 1 dash or comma or space, whatever your number is. And while Dan's thinking about compiling these things, I probably should see what I said that was. Okay. While we're compiling these things, I guess I want some feedback. Did it help to go through it first fast to see it flow, or you want to do that second? Does it help to go through that slowly, or is it too slow? There's a middle speed, a standard speed.
It's too slow.
It's too slow. I don't see
From my point of view, the normal speed would work much better.
Okay.
And the other aspect, you've got men highlighted and ladies highlighted.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. If you're going to run through it, especially when we get into the choreographic flow, do it for both so that you can watch both the men and the women separately. Just run it through twice, looking at the men and the women separately.
Let's just try that for heck. We'll put it on normal speed. Everybody concentrate on the men. And concentrate. Yeah, we're finishing concentrating on the men. Is that speed better?
Yeah.
It is for those that are capable. Seems like most of us. Good. And let's do it again, concentrating on the women. Now, one thing I've noticed that several of my sequences that I'd done in the past do have a problem of overflow for some people. So don't count that on. Don't blame me, I'm aware of it. Okay, Dan, have you got a tally? Dan, have you got a mute button or an unmute button? Oh, he's still tallying.
Somewhere here, I do have a tally. Sorry, I missed. Everybody's giving me a number dash number. What's the second number?
The second number is, the first number should be a 1, because this is sequence 1 in case we have to refer to these again. The second number is 1 to 5 as to how difficult this is.
Okay, yeah. So we have, and I'm sorry, my script for giving standard deviation and mean on this is there. We have 2 2s and everybody else is 1. And just one moment, I will give you how many that is. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 1s and 2 2s.
Wow.
The voting's rigged.
Would it be easier, Dan, if they put the 1 to 5 first and then the
sequence
number after?
My screwing up here is that for some reason the Mac has broken my Perl install since I last tried this, and I had a little script all set to make this run, and I will fix that while you're doing the next sequence, I hope, or switch to another language.
Anyway, and this doesn't have to be that accurate. I mean, you can just scan it and see, oh God, there's a whole lot of 4s. And somebody put a 1. What? They must be a challenge dancer and not know the difference yet. Now, very interesting. I put this as a 3. I thought this would be typical of dancing, calling at a club where I don't know the people, and a typical tip, I would dance for them. Yeah, it was pretty simple, and I can see 1 would be appropriate. Interesting. All right, so let's go back to, let me find the next one. Whoops. Copy it from my sheet, paste it into the sequencer. Oh, the other thing, does it help when I try to, what? I was up till 2:30 checking all these.
Paste again?
No, that's not going to help.
Yeah, no, I was just saying if you paste it again, we might be able to see where the problem is.
No, it's a,
It's a matter, I think, you have no numbers, and it's not going to identify particular people in there. Does that make any sense?
What's that step sides there?
Yeah, there you go. Take the step out of there.
But yeah, that
let's see if this works.
I don't think it will.
I've got plenty of sequences, so we can just ignore this. But yeah, copying and pasting from one word process to another and making PDFs, etc. I didn't stay up late enough last night. So does it help when I say, when I do the calls while we're doing it?
Yeah.
Hey,
Well, let me see if I can keep up with looking at that. Anyway, you can watch the men or the women, whatever you're comfortable with, or the whole square. We're going to run it at standard speed. Here we go. 4 ladies chain. 4 ladies chain 3/4. Heads square through 3 hands and step ahead, while the sides do a half square through. Put centers in, cast off 3/4, touch a quarter. Everybody circulate 1 1/2. Center 6, circulate 1 1/2. Center 4, I lost track of it. I tend to want to watch the dancers to get the thing going correctly. And a right and left grand. Anybody want to see it again before putting your number down? 1 to 4, 1 to 5. Go ahead, Flood.
Go ahead and run that again,
Is
Don.
this classed as number 2 then?
Okay. We're going to run this again. Yeah, let's just run it again. So 4 ladies chain. 4 ladies chain 3/4. Now the head, you square through 3 hands and then step ahead at the same time, but delayed because of this. Sides square through 2, put centers in. Everybody cast off 3/4, touch a quarter to a column. The column circulate 1 1/2. Column of 6 in the middle, circulate 1 1/2. Center 4 hinge, and those 4 fan the top. And I fell behind on my reading at that point. Ending with a box linette to a right and left grand. Tell me when, tell me when you got a bunch of numbers, Dan, or are you still changing your program? And while you guys are voting, I'm just going to let them go again.
Um, 4 1/4 for the average, and standard deviation is 6.4, or sorry, 0.64. So everything is 4s and 5s.
4s and 5s. Okay. I had it as a 4. Does anybody?
Oh, wait, but there's 1 3.
Okay. So the question is, let's do just a couple more and then maybe look at these and decide why we all agree. My theory is pretty close on this one. It was way off on the other, that we all, I'll get you in a second, Daryl, that we all pretty much see what's going on, and I know we have some very experienced callers and some not so experienced callers. We see what it is. Whether we can control it or not is another story. But Daryl, what's your comment? Unmute.
Yeah. I look at this, and the first thing pops into my head is dancer expectation. The dancers are not going to get through that. I would to just call this through to any floor that I can think of. They're not going to make it. Just flat isn't. The dancers don't expect to do these 1.5 circulate center 6 circulate once and a half, blah blah blah. Is it easy? I can see it, and as far as understanding how it works and why it works, that's fine. But I would never ever call that, especially not to a floor that I don't know. I mean, it isn't bad choreography is what I'm saying. It just isn't something that I could expect the dancers to be able to do.
I fully agree with you. I fully agree that there's no way I would go to as a guest caller somewhere and call this unless 3/4 of the way through the night, I could tell that they were really sharp guys and wanted to be pushed further. More like halfway through the night. That's a programming thing. I'm going to look at it one more time.
Exactly. Programming is preparation for that type of material. That could be a major part of your dance right there.
Yeah, and programming, I'll frequently do a challenging or workshopping because we'll do overs right after the really high peak near the beginning so that we don't try to compete with that high peak. Anyway, so we did a square through 3 and step ahead. The other two are going to do the square through 2 and centers in. Not too much of a problem here. Cast off 3/4, not a problem. Touch a quarter. And then this is where they have to start thinking. Is the circulate 1.5? Probably, whoops, circulate 1.5. Most places could get that, but it's kind of tough. And then the center 6 circulate 1.5. That's where they start to have problems. And then the center 4 hinge and then fan the top. There's going to be more of a problem in there. Now in the fan the top.
Don?
Yeah.
Just as a note, can you just throw the couple numbers on for a second?
Sure.
Now, this is where I was looking at it, and I completely agree with what Daryl was saying. To me, this is club level calling. If your club is used to dancing this type of material and you use this type of material a lot, and there are a lot of clubs that do that, I would never call this. But one of the comments that I wanted to make is, barring the double circulate, that would be the focus of the workshop material, and get rid of the fan the top being the plus. One of the other aspects of difficulty that adds on to this is in the middle of the flow, you say heads. If you're using this type of material, you have to be very, very careful that you're tracking who are the head couples, original heads,
Oh,
or is it
yeah.
that kind of stuff. And that's why it adds to the degree of difficulty, in my opinion, is what the dancers are expecting. Now they have to think in 3 dimensions instead of 2 dimensions.
That there are many places where I said, and the others do this or something like that, but Caminations didn't understand it. And that's why I had to do some of this 4 ladies chain and stuff at the beginning to make it so that when I called something like that, I could say heads, and Caminations understood it. I agree, that's difficult. And if I were calling it that way, I'd say original heads, give them an extra second to think. I also did some extra ladies chains and such at the end to make the get out work, but
I often call some material that this reminds me of, particularly with the circulate 1.5s and getting the couples out there and working the centers separate from the ends and all that jazz. But of the stuff that's up to this, and I would consider that to be, like you were saying, halfway through the night and they're doing really well and you want to do something a little bit different. This one though, but when I do that, I arrange the dancers in a little bit more detail, so that, for example, on the when they get to the couple situation where they have the people who are at the top and bottom of the square right now.
Yeah.
I would have those. I would almost always make those be same sex, so it would be the boys out there,
Yeah.
not a boy and a girl, and that helps them on doing that circulate 1.5, because they know, circulate 1.5. The boys, you're together as a couple now. See that, that kind of thing goes a long way towards success. This the way you're doing it here, just flat out without those kind of niceties. That makes it really. This is really pretty hard.
Well, that's why people voted 4 to 5 out of 5. We're proving that I know. We're proving my point of you guys got a gut feel for this. Now, again, where I say heads bend the line here, I really meant the outsides bend the line, or the others, but I couldn't get combinations to do it, so I had to call it heads, and I should have pointed that out.
See, I would say if I were doing this one, and I've lost track of where exactly some of the people are, but if it were the heads out there, I'd try to arrange them so that they had their original partner, and I could tell them that clue too. Heads, you got your original partner, bend the line.
Okay, well, let's talk more in the discussion as to whether we're going to, how we would solve this and what we would do about it. But right now I'm trying to get through some of these sequences so you can see that we're in pretty much agreement as to what's hard and what's easy. The next thing that I think was hard on this is I said heads, the centers pass through, and pass through from a wave isn't as common. Star through, wheel and deal without a pass through might get a few people. Centers do-si-do 1.5 will get, unfortunately, we'll get people because they're swinging in the middle.
That's 3 things right in a row that are all really hard. This is a 5 for sure.
Well, good. I mean, a lot of people said that. I put it at a 4. The average was 4.6, if I remember what Dan said. Let's go on to the next one. All right, here we go. Heads past the ocean, extend, swing through, boys run, couples circulate, chain down the line. I forgot where we were. Alaman left, recycle. You recycle Alaman left. Let's run it one more time. If you're thinking of your number, put it down. Heads past the ocean, extend, swing through, boys run, couples circulate, chain down the line, and past the ocean. Girls trade in the middle of that wave, recycle, and guess who? Tell me when you got some numbers, Dan. And by the way, that was
3.
Sequence 3, correct. Oh.
I feel like we're missing Jeopardy theme music.
This is Alex Beck. This is Alex the Beck.
My son's name is Alex, but let me copy that. Got some numbers?
We sure do. We got a 1.4 average with a standard deviation of 0.58.
Okay.
So a lot of ones. I was surprised at the 2 2s and 1 2.5, because this is something that I would call on a first answer night.
Yeah, I put it as a 1, but once again, we're all in pretty close agreement. Let's look at this next one. I forgot what it's going to do. Okay, let's look at this next one. Get your thinking numbers on. Oh, geez. It didn't like something. Wait.
Paste it up again. We can look at it.
Yeah, this wasn't the place to troubleshoot. head square through, touch a quarter.
Oh, you got the split circulate. You got to move it down there.
Yeah. Let's try that.
Oh no, you got. I think you got to
The
fix
touch
the
a quarter
center thing.
needed to be moved down to the next line.
Sometimes it can handle two lines at a time, but all right, square through, touch a quarter, split circulate, boys run.
You get on there, center square through. You got to move the centers over. Right, keep going, keep going. Left through centers and move that centers down.
Oh, yeah.
And probably that does it out.
Oh, you might want to move the element left on the bottom line.
And that wheel and deal.
Yeah, tag the line face right. Then you got the wheel and deal. Add that as an
Tag the line.
face right. Then they're
Wheel.
right there. Move the wheel and deal over. Then move the element left to the bottom, I suppose.
Yeah, it doesn't have to. It's got the comment out anyway, but
Well, whatever.
oh man, I am upset with all the work I did last night and double checking and
Hey, we're here for you.
yeah, I know, but that's not the point. Yeah, we'll have a session on proofreading sometime soon or how to. All right, are we ready? Here we go. Head square through. Touch a quarter, split circulate, boys run. Pass through, wheel and deal. Centers do a right and a left through. No, I guess, yeah. And square through 3, everybody do-si-do to a wave. Girls trade, girls run, tag the line and face right. Wheel and deal. And there she be, I hope, yeah. So you got numbers, Dan? Oh, yeah, we just did it for the first time. That's not going to help at all. Work on your numbers. These guys will dance it again.
And Don, I think it's just the cutting and pasting from your program that you typed it in that is the issue, not necessarily the proofreading.
Yeah, I know. Well, I proofed them by pasting them in and running them each time. And then I changed it to a PDF and I didn't try it again. And the PDF screwed me up. Got numbers, Dan? That was sequence 4. Yeah, sequence 4.
Things are filtering in, but as of right now, we are at 1.45 for the average and the standard deviation of 0.49. So kind of evenly split between 2s and 1s.
Wow, you know, that's interesting because this is the same problem with the first one that was a 3. That I said was a 3 and you guys said was the 1, and I think this was a 3. I would call this a regular club dance. I think it's the tag the line, face right, and wheel and deal from half sashayed couples that made me, or rather the tag the line. Yeah, anyway, someplace in there, what I was thinking would be a problem, but I guess not. Let's do one more and then, because this is sequence 5. I've got 19 sequences. We're not going to get through these.
You paste the next one. Let's look at it before you dump it in.
I know, or at least I should. Heads square through, centers single, heads swing through, centers single hinge. Oh, I'm going to give up and I'm going to see if I can see this. No, that doesn't help at all.
We're just looking for typos, I think.
Yeah, well, I'm looking for, lines that are jammed together.
Well, you got that right there, other square through 1, then you got wheel and deal. So put wheel and deal its own line, I guess.
Yeah. All right. It accepted that. Let's take a look at it.
We're going like a bat out of hell today.
Oh, yeah. Let's let them finish and then we'll go down to normal speed.
They're in a hurry.
I moved it on fast to get rid of the end stuff. Just, yeah. All right, let's go back to standard speed. I was trying to, last time going through, trying to finish it that way. All right. So heads swing through, same force with single hinge and walk and dodge. Everybody step 2, wave, centers trade, all 8 circulate. And it's going faster than I can read and watch the dancers at the same time. And we're done. Everybody got numbers they want to tell Dan about or have told them, or should we look at it slightly slower? I'm assuming you have numbers because nobody's saying anything, but I'm going to look at it again because I got lost here some places.
Just a question on that. Did you do all 8 circulate and circulate specified that way intentionally?
No, it
Okay.
just, that's terminations. I'm going to start over again because I'm having a little bit of concern here. So
You could have said all 8 circulate twice, couldn't you?
I tried that and it didn't work. I'm not sure
All right.
why. So I guess the interesting part is we have facing same sexes here.
Mhm.
Step 2 a wave, I use touch because it doesn't seem to understand step 2 a wave. Centers trade. Now our all 8 circulate is not the standard guys on the end and ladies in the middle. And circulate again. Then I have the ladies trade, which shouldn't be a problem, but who knows? Just the centers square through 4 while the ends star through. Everybody swing through again, same set, facing same sexes. Oh, do a single hinge and then fan the top, boys 3/4 and the girls move up. Turn through. Nobody knows how to do that anymore. Wheel and deal. Centers square through 3. Slide through. We got normal couples. Centers square through 3 while the ends pass through. And I wanted to say while the ends square through 1, but it didn't understand that. So I had the ends pass through. Do a wheel and deal. Pretty straightforward from here. Veer left, veer right, veer all over the place. What are your numbers, Dan?
Well, we had one late entry from Mark here, so that it took me a little bit longer to put this together, but 3.57 average, standard deviation of 1. So we had a much broader span here. There was even a 2 in there. So 2 to 5, a lot of 3s.
Huh. Interestingly enough,
I think those low numbers are indicative of something that, a premise that you put out, Don, that I think that I disagree with, which is that people are able to look at a sequence and determine how hard it is. Because I think the people that put a number 2 on there didn't quite understand about the sex arrangements that were happening, and because surely they know that some of those things are much more difficult than 2. But they just didn't quite track the choreography.
Yeah, I would agree, Chris. I put this at about a 4.5, mainly because you're starting with an a not relatively familiarly used call, starting cold with a head swing through, which is not all that common anymore. And then you've got the gender arrangements, and then you've got things like the turn through followed by another call that's not an allemande left. That's just going to add to the degree of difficulty because of dancer familiarity. They're not relatively often used calls, as well as the half sashayed on one side, not on the other, same sex arrangement type things.
I would have said 5 because I think that bow to your partner, corner 2, head swing through. You just lost half the floor.
Yeah.
Right away.
Now it's funny. I think that the swing through would not be a problem, but I agree with you. It's a 5. At least that was my feeling. And I was, again, shocked that. So because we've spent as much time as we have, I kind of agree with what Chris is saying. My premise that you guys will recognize this is not as clear as I thought it would be. And I think some of it is due to terminations rather than real dancers. And if you'd seen real dancers doing it, might have made more sense. When we've done this with real dancers, I tried to get a random square of callers and partners, and that was a total failure because they couldn't dance. You could tell the hard ones because they couldn't dance it. So we'd get a square of challenge dancers up there so everybody would move through it smoothly, and people could still tell. But I think even with my making the different colors of the different genders here, it's still, terminations doesn't quite show the difficulty that really exists in this. Anyway, I've got tons more sequences, but not tons more time. Let's just look at this one real quickly to see where the more difficult parts are. So some people like Dan and Chris think swing through from the beginning is a problem. With terminations, it took the sides by surprise and they're standing there in the way. Single hinge shouldn't be a problem. Walk and dodge, usually the men are walking and the girls are dodging, but it shouldn't be a problem. Too bad. I wouldn't use it in class. Facing same sex, step to a wave, and the centers trade. All 8 circulate double. Boys are going across, girls are going across. Now the girls trade, that shouldn't be a problem if they had time to orient when they're there. Now just the center square through 4 while the others square through or star through. Again, with timing, you should be able to keep people moving. The others can star through while they're doing it. Everybody swing through, again, it's same sex. So that's, now one of the hardest parts I think is here. Let's go back. I think this is always difficult. These guys are working in this wave and we do a single hinge and say fan the top, and all of a sudden they have to be aware of this wave. And I think that's the part that I really thought was the most difficult. And then the turn through from a wave rather than facing couples. And again, not to an allemande left, as somebody pointed out. We have normal couples now, so the wheel and deal shouldn't be too bad. Centers square through 3. Slide through is comfortable after a square through 3 because the square through 3 has an offset. What did I do here? Centers square through 3 while the others square through 1 or pass through in this case. Shouldn't be too hard, except for the center square through 3 was half sashayed. Wheel and deal, we've got normal couples, and then centers veer left, veer right, veer right. That's not a problem for people. Probably, I think the hard part was single hinge cast 3/4, fan the top. But anyway, let's
I think
it's interesting you would say that, Don, because where I was dancing in Canada and here, one of the things that's really stressed is after movements like single hinge is the establishment of hand contact. That is not where I would see a lot of the difficulty in flow. So that's being the ability to assess the floor. The things where the transition for the center square through 3 ends coming off of that wheel and deal, that transition from working as a couple to establishing the centers when you have hand contact, and as I said, the turn through to a wheel and deal or turn through to things that are not called head swing through, that's where I found the real difficulty in that. So it's going to vary from place to place, from caller to caller, but it all boils down to how familiar are you with the dancers, I would suppose.
This is a typical place that I would say adds difficulty. If I'm in an 8-chain through setup and I say touch a quarter, these guys are working with each other here.
Yep.
And if I expect them to change focus to this wave, like saying centers trade, without giving them some hint, check a wave, centers trade.
Yeah, I agree. Touch a quarter, but hinge to me has always been a quick reestablish, reach out and touch somebody. That's the way I always taught it. And that in itself isn't interesting, because touch a quarter centers trade is much more difficult than from a wave to a single hinge centers trade. I don't know why, but it just is.
So we didn't leave too much time for general discussion. We've proven that my point sort of works. I mean, you guys are all in agreement. Just because you don't agree with me doesn't mean it didn't work. That you guys have the feel for it. And any discussions starting with Daryl? Is this kind of an exercise useful? Do we want to go through some other day, some of my other sequences? I'll prove them better. Daryl, go ahead.
I think it's worth the time spent on it. Speaking from my perception as a caller, that I did used to call to different groups time after time after time. The first thing I would say is you need to know what you can expect from all dancers. The standard applications. Beyond that, things like that walk and dodge after the single hinge in that last figure. You need to use things like boys walk, girls dodge, girls walk, boys dodge. That clears up any problems with an unfamiliar floor if you want them to get through it. Knowing that type of stuff is important.
And specify those in the center working in the center.
Well, they're already active. It's easy enough to say boys do this, girls do that, or vice versa. Gender enters into a whole bunch of that last thing. I'm not going to go into a bunch of that, but one comment I will make about that whole figure, and I know that you'll recognize this, there's too many things that are not normal between the times that you want them to be normal.
In a row,
that's a difficulty level all by itself. You want to go from something that's not normal back to something that is normal. You can go away from it as long as you're not away from it too long. So those two comments in particular.
That's a good point, Daryl, that I've thought of in the past and heard other people talking about in the past that I didn't take into consideration here. But a lot of callers, if they want to throw in something difficult but get the dancers through it, is they do 2 or 3 vanilla things to set it up, and then 2 or 3 vanilla things afterwards. I used to do stuff that may be tough, but I would get them into normal couples and normal formations right away afterwards. And here where I was stacking unusual things together does add a degree of difficulty that I hadn't been thinking of at this point, but it's a good point to point out. I think callers that are doing beginning challenge or beginning advanced with their dancers. It's the same thing. You throw in a challenge call, let them dance a little, throw in another challenge call, let them dance a little, versus the real challenge callers will call a challenge call, another challenge call, and then another one. And then voila, you're home, but because they've written the material. Any other?
There's so many different things going on in that sequence, and like, just to talk about that walk and dodge again for a second, the one thing to, it's got different people doing the part of the walk and dodge, but another thing that offsets that a little bit is the fact that you have the outside people are static while that's going on, and you have the center people, they're isolated. So when they do that walk and dodge, there's a pretty good chance that even if they screw it up, enough people in there, I mean, there's only 4 of them, but enough of them will be in there so that they can, grab the person next to them and turn them around to face the outsides like they were supposed to be. I mean, in other words, because of the fact that they're compacted there in the middle with each other, and nobody's messing with them, and they have a reference point of the sides are standing out there waiting for them to join them, or whoever it is out there, they can muscle their way through it and push and shove as much as needed to get through that one. So that mitigates the fact that it's an unusual one.
It actually, that interesting, because as I mentioned, we more often than not do a boys walk and girls dodge, even from the normal box circulate or facing couples. And at that point, we're doing the boys dodge, but the center boys are facing somebody. They may want to walk into the sides and tell the guy to get out of the way. That's an added confusion point that I didn't even think of in there. John, you had a question or a comment or a helpful.
Well, I can see when you were throwing your exercises up there and the Taminations was going through it, I was watching a bunch of squares and circles running around. Meanwhile, the experienced callers were knowing that, oh, that's a boy-girl, that's a girl-boy combination. Those are in sequence, out of sequence. It just shows you how far it is that I'm just seeing a bunch of dots, and you guys, the experienced callers, are seeing combinations that are normal, unnormal, and stuff like that. So it goes to show you how far I've got to go to be able to look at that. And it's just a skill level I need to develop. It's like a baseball player looking at a curved ball or a fastball or something like that. So it's just something I need to do. I got to get out of my static mode into a dynamic mode, and I haven't made that corner yet. I'm still thinking around in the static world. I need to get over into that dynamic world.
Now, what was I going to say? First of all, we weren't looking who's in sequence and who's not. I hid the identities intentionally just so we could see the flow.
Well, Mel picked up on a lot of that I didn't do.
Yeah. But to you, it was still boxes and squares and circles and not dancers. Maybe we should have Janet run this with Taminations one of these sometime and see, not Taminations, I'm sorry, Dancerama, where it appears to be more like dancers. And it'd be interesting to see if that made it any different, because as I say, this has worked much more successfully for me when I've had real dancers out there. But I think the main point I have proven was that it's a pretty tight curve. Most of the people agree this was hard or this was easy, and not necessarily why, but even though as a newer caller, it's pretty difficult to control that on the fly if you're sight calling and just freewheeling, at least you've got the first step of recognizing it when you see it, that, oh my God, I better not call this kind of a thing for my class because they just learned pass through and they know tag the line, but they don't know how to do a zigzag after it or what have you.
Do you add the degree of difficulty by the length? Does that figure into your degree of difficulty at all? The number of calls?
It hadn't in my original thought, in my original thinking about these sequences. Most of them are, let's say 10 to 15 calls long. Some of the extra calls are just to resolve at the end because it's more fun to do that part. And the only reason I know how many calls is when I finished them in Tamnation, I pushed copy because it formatted it Tamnation wise, and it usually would say 11 calls copied. But no, I didn't figure that in, but that's a good point. And that's one of the good reasons that you should either be a good sight caller or a mental image caller, that when you see half the floor is broken down on a 15 call sequence, that you resolve them before that.
One of the things that that the harder of these sequences remind me of is the admonition that everybody has given all the new guys a million times, but I'm just to say it again. If if you need to do the calls to see what happens, that's not good. You should know beforehand that you're setting up a different mixed sex arrangement, or an all 8 circulate where you don't have same sexes, in the middle and the end, and that sort of thing. And if you're calling along and you have to do the call and then see where they land and then go, oh, I guess that was hard. Look, they're in a different place now. I thought the boys would be together, but that's not good. You should be able to track that stuff better. You should know ahead of time what's going to happen.
So the exercise here was just to watch the dancers in afterwards and be able to tell inherently whether it was easy or hard. The next step in learning how to control it is when we do our 14-part class here. As Chris said, we'll just paste the things in and read the calls and decide before seeing them danced as to whether it's going to be hard or easy, knowing where they're going. But right here, we weren't going into that. Mel, what have you got to add to this?
You asked earlier whether this is a good exercise. I think it's not only a good exercise to do, I think it's an absolutely essential and crucial exercise for all callers to do, is going back and analyzing sequences, your own or other sequences, for the degree of difficulty. What I really liked at the beginning was you put that list of everything from dancers' formation awareness, arrangement, relationships, to the full moon, to the slipperiness of the floor. And the ideal is to eliminate as many of those as possible, as you said. In this last sequence, the other thing that I noted, I thought we picked up on, was we talk about the degree of difficulty when you do a hinge centers trade. We changed the terminology based on the formation and arrangement of the single couple to that of the relationship within the square. So we use, for instance, a single hinge, centers hinge, block and dodge, meaning, well, I want a right-hand hinge from an ocean wave, to a centers hinge, meaning I want the centers in the ocean wave to hinge, but we're using the exact same terminology. That puts the onus of understanding acutely on the dancers to understand that that same wording, that same terminology, is different from whatever formation or arrangement you're in. So all of those things compound to add to the degree of difficulty. That's why I was sitting at a 4.5 out of 5 or a 5 out of 5. I agree. I think it's an absolutely essential exercise that all callers should go through. Well done. More of it.
If you have any interest in my doing this on your
absolutely. We had Betsy in. She did a presentation on degree of difficulty, which is good, which covered a lot of the same points, but we looked at just the generic topic of it to actually put it into a practical. I would love to have you there.
I did say that at the beginning, that many people have done so. I didn't get a chance to hear Betsy's thing, but many people I've heard do really good analysis of what makes things hard and what makes things easy, and looking at how the brain works and all this other stuff. But I don't find that as useful to the newer or even experienced caller in actually being able to improve their control over this. And I thought this was more of an exercise that gave you a start on doing that kind of a thing.
Yeah, well, what I was pointing out in specific is I really appreciate the fact that you take from a PowerPoint presentation or a 15, 20 or a 40-minute presentation of theory why this is difficult, to here it is, now let's look at a sequence, look how it flows, and let's rip apart why we think this is difficult, or why this is easy, or what's happening in it. And that practical application is the follow-up of the presentation. And that's what is absolutely crucial, because that's what will gel it, especially in new callers and experienced callers' minds.
Yeah, and I think if you did a workshop where you walked them through a bunch of, I mean, it would take a long time, but it, I was going to say the same thing as Mel, is that it'd be great for them to take these sequences and go sit down and play with the checkers and think very carefully about each thing. The even better thing maybe would be to have a workshop where you have, Don could be walking them through that process and helping them understand, every call along the way. See, now we did this, and they're kind of thinking that, but now we're shifting the focus over here, or we're changing the sex or whatever, and really getting into the nitty gritty of why along the way, and compounding throughout the sequence, just what the heck is going on there about why these things are, and that would give them a big jump up on how to do that thing themselves. And you could keep referring back to that PowerPoint list of 20 things or whatever it is of this one's got it's hard, and it's been a long time since they were normal, and it's hard for this reason and hard for that reason, and whatever, every just to help them figure out how to apply all those points in detail. That sounds like a really cool workshop.
I would agree, Chris. And looking at it specifically, one of the things that we don't look at, this is not just for new callers, but for experienced callers too, or callers that have a disadvantage in that they, advanced and challenged dancers that are thrust into the fore of learning how to call. They don't think about it in that turn, because if you're a challenged dancer learning how to call basic and mainstream because you're thrust into it, you're still thinking like a challenged dancer. You're not thinking like a brand new dancer. This exercise makes a caller actually think of all the things that you have to be thinking of while you're calling, while you're preparing, and why you program the way you do with your sequences, with your modules, with your ideas in your head. I think it's a fantastic idea that needs to be expanded on.
So, some of these specific, as far as challenge callers go, and what they're used to, if they're going to be calling advanced or challenging or anything, all of these same things apply just as they do here, and for all the same reasons. Some of the answers might be slightly different. The tuning might be a little different because things about call familiarity and formation familiarity and things like that, the answers will be different. Oh, they've seen that plenty of times, and gosh, by this point they really ought to have not any problem doing any kind of all eight circulate from anywhere. Some of the specific answers might be different, but they're all of those things are all still considerations that you still do every time at every level forever, even if sometimes the numbers add up slightly differently.
Before you pitch in, we have gone just a little past the hour. I want to give everybody an excuse that they can leave without feeling guilty. Thank you all for coming, Dan for emceeing and tallying our stuff, and for the discussion, which I think is just getting started. I've got a few more comments I want to go to. As usual with any of these Saturday things, no matter how good, how bad the topic is, there's always a lot of good discussion. And here, I think there's a lot more to go on, and I have a few questions for some of you, but let's make it officially ending. Thank you guys for coming. And if you have to slither away, please don't feel guilty. And if you have to slither away and want to hear more, I'm sure Dan will have this thing posted eventually. Daryl, you had something to say.
I do, probably more than I should, but in any case, I can't tell you, for the newer callers, I can't tell you how important it is to know the standard application. That's your starting place. That's where you want to start. There is a booklet. If you know what everybody can do, that gives you an idea of what they might not be able to do. So start with the
Daryl, you're coming in and out. Your picture's freezing. Sometimes your voice is also like now.
The basics first, which is what everybody can, then. And I don't hear it on my end, obviously. Where would know what they can do. By that, you'll have an idea what they can't do. When you find what they can't do, what you want to do is find a way to prepare them to get through it. That's how you put your material together, that you can get up and call the different floors. You can prepare the dancers for it. Now, your own dancers at your own club, what they can do, you should already know that because you taught them how to dance. Now, the things that don't flow, don't do them, because that's a difficult thing to do, is get dancers to do something that doesn't feel good. Always remember, go from difficult to normal, hard to easy, and don't make it too far in between. With that, I'll shut up and let everyone.
I've got a question that I'd like a consensus on the from you on the presentation approach. I originally, when I used to do this, I would say judge it on 1 to 10. I decided 1 to 5, and yet when I went through these sequences, 2 of them I couldn't decide, so I said they were 3.5. I says, does that mean I want a scale of 10? The other option is going on a scale of 3, class level, club level, or challenging level. We'd probably get more consensus that way. Anybody got any thoughts on the presentation of, if we do it again, how many parts we should break it into?
Well, I was always, oh, go ahead.
Okay. I think there's a little bit of a challenge in like what frame of reference is difficult or easy for. Like the first one you laid out there had the leaders partner trade, and I thought, oh, okay, that's a little bit more difficult because people have to identify leaders versus trailers. And then I never saw something that I thought was a 5 because I didn't see any offset boxes. So, you know, there's a lot of like, well, okay, I could rate some of these 1 to 5 just in the, I'm teaching them to new dancers first night here. And then others are, well, we're not getting any challenge concepts in it, so it doesn't flow. And I noticed a couple of other people, you know, we did have a couple of 2.5s and 3.5s in things where people were essentially using a 10-point scale, even though we asked for a 5. So
so some people, a bunch of people, I guess, had some fractional ones. So yeah, surely that means we need to expand the range a little bit, maybe. But I was thinking 6. I wanted 1 to 6.
I was always told you should use an even number, and 1 through 4 is what works well, because everybody will pick, well, 2.5 is the middle. So it's either just a little below average, or it's just a little above average, or it's terrible, or it's really good. And so if you have an odd number, you can't really pick a middle ground. You have to be either a little better or a little worse based on what you think the difficulty would be.
Oh, wow. That's an interesting, different way for me to think about it, but I'll have to think about that.
Because most people, when they're filling out evaluation, they default to the middle. If you eliminate the middle, they have to choose.
Chris, if we did what you wanted on a 10 scale, I'd be voting 7.3 on things,
I wouldn't go to 10, but I would go to 6.
That agrees with what Janet's saying too. So I have 2 specific questions. One is Yolanda, how did you find this? I know you're still having troubles following the formation in general. Was seeing it happen on screen and hearing the calls, did you get some value out of this, or?
Yes. So once you put termination up, then that works much better for me. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you were saying it at the same time, that really works. Some of it is like Helen said, I just didn't notice that the one sequence where there was a half sachet, I didn't notice that they flipped. So that's just learning how to read the termination, read the floor better. That just comes with experience, right? Yes,
Well-
if nothing else, it's teaching me how much I still have to learn. Right?
Great. When you say you were having troubles figuring the half sashayed or not and reading the floor, I'm thinking of John's comments about reading the squares and circles. And my other directed at somebody question, on a scale of 1 to 5, I should have had Brian give us a 6.
I'll give you an example of just one call that I consider to be impossible or crazy the first time you hear it. And it's something that you would never do to anybody. It was something that Barry Clasper did for the Teen Festival Mysteries once. And when I heard it, I just about cried. It was so amazing. Very, very simple idea, but extremely difficult in execution. So think about this. Maybe don't let your brains go too crazy. But he called this. I think it was from Facing Lines of 4, and he just said square through, but on every hand swing through. So the first hand, of course, is a right hand, and then the second hand in the square through is a left hand, but you still have to do a right swing through. And then the third hand, you go back, of course, to a right hand and you do a normal swing through. And then again, for the fourth hand, you have a left hand. So it's very painful. And the fun part is it's actually equivalent to a square through 4. So it's ridiculously simple and funny, but also very, very difficult to dance.
Now, here's an interesting question, even though that's mainstream calls, or maybe even basic, I don't know. There's the concept, it's throwing in the concept of, but do this and then that, and do this and then that. And is the concept allowed at mainstream, or is it, we're getting into talking about concepts? Chris and I have talked in the past that he may do something about giving people a feel for what challenge dancing is. I don't know. Getting you cold here, Chris, because we haven't talked about it recently, but not to make people challenge callers or dancers, but just to give you an appreciation, the mainstream basic people, an appreciation of what's going on up there. And a lot of it is new calls and new definitions and new formations, but a lot of it is concepts. And this is kind of a challenging concept that Brian just said. Do part of this, then do that, then do another part of the first one, then do that. And yeah, I wouldn't call that to an open floor.
Oh, that particular sequence, I hadn't heard that before. That call, I think it's great. That one goes in some, I'm not sure what the label is, but the words after it are Hall of Fame. Something Hall of Fame.
Yeah, Don, just to answer your question, the on the nth hand or on the third hand, fourth hand, etc., that is introduced in the basic program as part of the basic program. It's part of the extended applications. They use square through specifically as the example, but there is a lot of caution that should absolutely be used on that. Like, I'm just curious, Brian, if you say on square through, but on every hand swing through, that of course is a right hand swing through for each time, even with the left hand starts. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Most definitely, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
That's really what makes it difficult beyond belief.
Can we get a square up and look at it? No, never mind.
Well, certainly at
well, the other,
I don't have any compunction about calling square through on 3 touch a quarter or on 3 right and left grand, but I mean this is kind of an example of well I guess that means do a call and on the nth hand or any hand or whatever. No. It's you know, I'm not sure exactly what it says on the applications documents or whatever about whether or not you're allowed to do that, but the crazy example with the swing through on every hand, I mean we all know that's way out of bounds for any
I'd give
normal
that a difficulty
situation.
level of about a 7 on a scale of 1 to 5.
Just because you can do something like that or in that vein at a given level, that doesn't mean you can do everything at that level. And that's it's just something beginner callers, if they didn't realize that already, yeah, don't get carried away in that way. You have to be judicious about what you call at the level.
Yeah,
There's
Chris, in the basic document, what they use is on the third hand, spin the top, on the third hand, 8 chain 5, on the third hand, box the net, fourth hand left, swing through, fourth hand, allemande left, or third hand, touch a quarter. Those are the specific examples that they give dealing with the on the nth hand for the square through. So it is introduced, it is part of the program, but it is also listed as extended applications of the program.
the things that ingredients that I see that makes, I'll be with you in a second, Helen, the things that make it difficult, Brian's thing difficult that I see are, in addition to what you've already said, you know, after one hand do this, oh, what was the call I was doing? Oh yeah, I was back on a square through, I got to go back. Now I got to go to a swing through. Now I got to go back to a square through. Remembering where you were in the square through and continuing with that. And then there's the additional factor that starting a swing through from a left-handed wave with the center starting instead of end and adjacent centers is a little step beyond normal also. And combining that all together, yeah, you did what I expected, Brian. You gave us something beyond 5. Helen, what was your comment?
You were saying something about new callers, be careful and so on. And my strategy is to, for my own sake, try to make it simple. But what happens is I get myself into a mess because I don't realize that I'm sort of doing something that is difficult. So that's the thing. And also here, I noticed that I was giving 1s and 2s, but the experienced callers were giving them 3s and 4s because you could see the difficulties. I couldn't sort of see the difficulties. Even when I wasn't calling, I was just watching. So when I'm calling, I kind of, you know, do things that make it difficult. And I would say that, Brian, I think that sounds really fun. And I know dancers would think that was really fun. And I'm sure we'd really laugh and have fun doing it. But I would never dare to call it because even if I have very good dancers, I'm not a very good caller. So I have to sort of be very careful with keeping things at a simple level that I can deal with. But I think there's lots of different, difficult, but very fun things that we should be able to, you know, call. I want to dance them anyway. So, but as a new caller, I'm very, very, very careful not to do anything I know is difficult.
In case anybody missed it, that square through and on every hand swing through number, that was designed to attempt to break down at a competition event the best square dancers in the world. So that's how hard that was.
Helen, you're sort of disproving the thing I said, that we have an inherent feel for what's easy and what's hard.
Yeah.
Even well before we can control it. So I'm hoping this exercise not brought that inherent thing out in you, but helped you try harder to see some of those things or why they might be.
I think this is a fantastic exercise because it's going to help me to identify things that are difficult. I don't agree with some of the things you think are difficult because
you guys teach differently there. I mean,
yeah, well, we don't think so much about sexes. I mean, when you're talking basic, there are only a handful of calls that you have to think about the sexes. The rest is just sort of the same. So I think that we maybe call a little bit more girls, girls, boys, boys, and that kind of thing than you do. But still, of course, there are difficult things. Of course there are.
And you spend a lot more time teaching basic. You don't feel that you have to jump ahead like we Americans have to be in the lead.
Yeah, no, it's totally true. You guys, you teach them much more thoroughly, and so there's a whole bunch of stuff that we think of as harder because we don't spend enough time in basic on it. I mean, the sexes that we were talking about is one thing, but I mean, even Don's concern about turn through, which I also would agree with, like, oh, turn through, God, that's going to be a problem. You know, I'm sure your dancers do that just fine. Don't bat an eyelash.
And I don't think that it's a fact that you guys are taking the time to teach more. I think it's the fact that you guys are enjoying the fact you can dance a lot of stuff without having to memorize lots more. You know, it's.
Yeah, but have any of you called in Europe? And I mean, are we better than you? I mean, have you been to Europe to call? Mel, you have, of course, but.
So every year at the IAJSDC, there are a number of European dancers who come over and dance. And last time I danced with European dancers, one of the things we did was set up a square in the back of the hall and did everything mirrored. So yeah, I mean, you know, these are people flying to the US to dance, but yeah, that's what I expect out of European dancers as a dancer.
I've called to some visiting European dancers on, I don't know, maybe like 4 or 5 times in my life, you know, when they've come by to visit a club I was calling to. And actually it seems a little bit variable in that sometimes they're really good at some things, and I can't remember what the specific things were, but now that I think of it, sometimes I was a little bit surprised that and that might be just a difference in sort of what they're used to, as opposed to a more underlying thing of what they really know.
I kind of agree with that, Helen. I've called in Sweden and in Germany and Czech Republic, and you know, I was warned how good the dancers are, but calling my normal stuff, sometimes that was just a little bit different for them, and they were not challenged. They were challenged but win kind of thing. You know, and some of the, like when Al Stevens and I would share a dance and he'd go back and forth, he'd call some strange stuff that my dancers back here couldn't dance probably, but it's only because they use those variations more than we do. And so, yeah, they're good, but sometimes I question if they're as good as, you know, the extra good. Yolanda? Yes,
Yeah.
I've called in Canada too, but that's not overseas.
No, that's not my point, actually. I was invited to attend the basic mainstream European group a couple of weeks ago, and I found that they do much more left-handed stuff. And to begin with, I was expected, like in Canada and US, they always say left-handed, unless it's a right-handed one, right? And so they would workshop with left hand, but then once they went into dancing, you had to figure out if it's right or left-handed on your own. So the first time I thought, oh, I'm making mistakes. And then I realized that's how they call. You know, you figure out if it's left-handed or right-handed, and I thought, oh, well, that's so neat. You have to figure it out your own.
Well, that's normal. I mean, there's you almost never need to say left.
Well, that's what I've been dancing, where people specify. Okay.
That's a dependency habit that's built up in North America. For instance, spin the top from a left-hand wave. You hear left spin the top all the time. You don't hear that much in Europe.
Yeah.
A lot of that goes to the fact that the dances are translated from the definitions are now the dance action, and that wording is not there because it just tends to confuse a lot of the issues. One of the interesting things that I found with the European dancers, I had the same impression, but I was recently corrected on by a number of European callers that in the Czech Republic, the dancing is at a slightly different level than the rest of Europe. But most of the dancers there dance basic through advanced through challenge. If you've got a basic dance going, all your challenge dancers are going to attend that dance anyway. If you've got a mainstream dance, all your challenge dancers and everybody up to that level are going to be dancing at those dances. And that gives a bit of a misnomer. Most of the club levels is you dance longer, you're more familiar with it, and you do a lot more of the extended applications. But many of the callers over there said they've called in the States and Canada and abroad. And at club level, their dancing is really not all that much different than would be at a regular solid level club that actually uses a program. It's not weird and wonderful and everything is abstract and DVD all the time. It's just good solid dancing. And as you said, they'll workshop how to do a spin the top from a left-hand wave, but after that, it's just a spin the top. And that's
there's no such thing as left spin the top. That's just,
I agree, but that's the way it's prompted all the time.
Actually, there is such a thing as left spin the top from facing couples.
Right, right.
Left. The-
Good point.
The just to give an example of something that I don't know how the Europeans would do it, but it was in one of the sequences, uh, um, and depending on what group you're calling to, they'll either have no trouble with it, or it'll just totally kill them and they'll have no idea what's going on. And there was a do-si-do once and a half, and of course, when I learned to dance, nobody ever called that that I can ever remember. And then some people started calling it at some point a little bit, and it was kind of a little fad, and a lot of dancers in different areas would do a do-si-do once and a half. And um, the and now now I think the fads died down, and it would depend on exactly the group. Is that hard or not? And that's just an example of something that they may or may not have ever seen.
I've got a couple stories about that one. When I was out in 1970 in Colorado at a caller school, Frank Lane was telling the story about Frank was known for doing very interesting stuff with his mainstream calls, and he called a do-si-do once and a half to an Alaman left, and he had a fairly experienced caller, and he was also one to gotcha to the dancers, and he had a fairly experienced dancer come up to him afterwards and say, most of your stuff was pretty good, but that one thing that you called do-si-do once and a half to a corner didn't work. And Frank said to him, well, I noticed the way you danced it didn't work. And sort of pointing out to him there's a problem. But I know I'm calling to the better dancers around New England. I'm thinking tech squares in particular. If you say do-si-do once and a half, they'll go into the middle and swing and do their thing, but their mind is doing it correctly. So if you say once and a half, go on to the next person and do something, their mind will correct their body instantly. And it's sort of a combination of having fun doing it one way and knowing they should be doing it another.
Don,
go ahead,
Don,
John.
Mel's got that sequence that Brian set up. Can we watch that once? That square through and then swing.
Did you set that up, Dan? Mel?
Mel's.
Yeah, I just used calls. Brian was saying I saw a lot of confused faces when you said square from line, square through 4, but on every hand swing through, and it's doing exactly the same as a square through. I saw a lot of faces go, what? So I just set it up using other calls just so you could see what the flow of it was if you wanted to look at it.
Yeah, the other rule of thumb with difficulty of calls is if it can't be done with intaminations, chances are it's too hard.
What you mean?
Not
like
really.
And square through 1.
Actually, Brian, let me point out that one of the sequences we didn't get to, and somebody was talking about odd formations, is I had a standard quarter tag formation in one of them, and I said those facing pass through, which would be the center of the wave and one of the outsides. Taminations couldn't do that.
And I had to do facing dancers pass through.
Huh?
Yeah, I found in Taminations you have to type it exactly like it's programmed. You get facing dancers pass through, but not those facing. It's really bizarre.
I had to lead it off with a 4 ladies chain 3/4, so then I could say heads pass through, and I got them through it. But, Taminations is a language all in itself, and I found that out. Translating my sequences to that yesterday took much longer than I thought. So how have you worked that out, Mel? Is it on Colorama or something?
Okay. No, on Taminations.
Oh, okay.
Is my screen up there?
Yeah.
It is.
Okay, so if you did that's your start state for it. That's your end state. Is that correct, what you were saying?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. But what I was looking through, you use the same start state, so you've got square through. So your first hand is actually a swing through. So there's the first hand. You finish, now you've got to finish it with the right pull by quarter in. There's the second hand, which starts with the left hand, but it starts with a swing through, so the girl starts swing through. And then the same thing, I just adjusted it to a line just for ease of reference. And now your third hand is a right hand swing through. And face in. Your fourth hand is just a pull by, but because of that, it's a swing through, followed by your pull by. Oops, I did one too many hands there. But you get the idea.
Can you run the whole thing without stopping?
Yeah.
Just to watch the flow of it?
Three. Four. And that's it there. I did a square through 5. Went one too many hands, that's all.
Is that 3 or 4? I lost track.
Mel, can you copy that and do it with just 2 couples facing?
Don't know if it'll work. It should work.
One.
Okay, so no, I have to adjust to a wave.
Never mind. I got a comment on another question somebody had about the ability of the European callers versus the American ones. And one thing I noticed that when I called in Canada and when I call in New Zealand, they speak English close to the way we do. When
Yeah,
I
they
call,
speak English.
huh?
They actually speak English.
Yeah, I know, and I speak close to that. When I called in Sweden, just about everybody was really good with English, and so there wasn't too much of a problem. When I called in Germany, there were an awful lot of English speakers, and so there was not too much of a problem. When I called in the Czech Republic, there was a very small number of people at the time that speak English. I think it's more now than it was then. And so whenever I learned quickly that any helper words I had just confused them, and I had to just, the best thing was to say the call and shut up and let them dance it. So as far as the dancer ability in different countries, a lot of that I think has to do with how well they understand English too. But Yolanda?
So if I could, when I first started squirting in the 80s, we had more people. So we had a night specifically for basic mainstream and another one for just mainstream, right? So we got more practice each week. And as the amount of members went down, in order to make it financially feasible to keep the club going and the rent, they ended up combining time. So you ended up with the first hour of teaching basic and then an hour of mainstream. And I noticed that the comprehension reduced because they didn't have as much time to practice. You know, there wasn't this solidification of the call. So that might be part of it as well, you know?
Well, that was one of the things I said at the beginning is dancer ability or familiarity with the calling, is that assuming everybody was a capable dancer, there's still degrees of difficulty with the choreography itself. But yeah, there's all sorts of other things that go into it. And I probably, Mel, should go back and listen to Betsy's on what's hard and what's easy. But again, I'm trying to here not to pick brains or make you manipulate your brain. You know, it'd be awfully hard to say, I'm going to call this. Oh, let me grab the standard applications book and oh, it's not in there. I better work them through it.
Well, Don, I'd like to throw this out there if I can. I love the session. I love the practicality of the session. I love the ability to actually look at a sequence, see it in writing, assess it. Is this hard or difficult? Then see it dance, reassess it, and then break it down and reassess it again. If you're not going to do a follow-up here, I would love you to come and do one or maybe even two follow-ups on my sessions, specifically for that, looking at sequences. You can discuss why it is, why it isn't as a prelim, but then actually do this and then have some of the newer callers put some of their sequences up. And what do you think about this? And actually look through it. We've done that on the last two sessions, which is just essentially looking at choreographic development. They were very well received. I'm still getting submissions for choreography of sessions that have ended 3 weeks ago. I'd love to have you do that. Or if you're not going to follow it through here, or even if you are going to do it here, you can do a combined session. You can do yours, then we can come back for part 2 on mine at 9 o'clock. However you want to do it, but I'd love to continue this because it's a very valuable exercise.
I would love to, Mel. I have enough sequences, and I can always write more, that will, I think we should do a follow-up series, not necessarily next week, but sometime in the near future. I've got another couple that are possibly lined up.
No, I've got a couple lined up, but I'd love for either in the new year or in a couple of weeks, look at this again.
And I've got a couple of, enough sequences to go through with yours. When I went, the last thing I did going through mine last night was I said, I shouldn't start off with a 5. And I tried to find a 1 or a 3 or something. And so I wrote a quick thing, which I thought was a 3 and turned out to be a 1. But yeah, there's, and I also will clean up the thing. I've been tempted, but I won't right now because I think it's gotten late, but to look at a couple of my 3.5s to see why I couldn't decide whether it was a 3 or 4 and what people think of. We'll save that for another time.
You don't see anybody running away.
I guess I'm not running.
I don't know why you thought that first one was anything other than a 1. I'd be curious to know what you were thinking there. Somebody, Dan, I think, mentioned something about the leads trade being tricky, but I don't think of that as tricky. But again, that's maybe just my dancers.
I put that as a 2 just because of that leads trade. That if I called that, I would expect both that I'd have to get the timing dead right to make it smooth because they're moving forward and then all of a sudden stop and trade versus a first couple left, next couple right. And because it makes the lead trailer, that dancers have to think about that.
Yeah, I didn't really see that because after a double pass through, it was one of those intuitive calls, leaders trade. You really only have one set of leaders, and it's obvious because they're in that completed double pass through. If you called that from a double pass through, a leaders trade or an ocean wave or any of those others, definitely it would be problematic. But from a double pass through, I didn't see it.
And I suspect that some of that.
There's an interesting thing, though, you said about the flow, Dan, which is it sounded like you would be stacking the calls, so you would say, double pass through and the leaders trade or something more along that. Whereas if I was calling that, I'd be double pass through, and I mean only a split second before they totally stopped what I say leads trade. I wouldn't give them I wouldn't make them start thinking about leads until they were really mentally totally clear on that as Mel is saying, that you can see, oh, I see, we're the guys at the end here, we must be the leads. And so that's another thing about difficulty is in the delivery of these things. Little subtle timing differences like that can make a huge difference in dancer success.
I was just exchanging messages with John Juergens yesterday about how 2 experienced callers can call the exact same sequence and have completely different difficulty for that sequence. Yes.
Timing and delivery.
So true. I am trying to put together a what I had down as a 1, just to show what I was thinking of as a basic thing. I'm running it through now to get rid of the to get rid of the extra spaces that I have to put in. Paste. Let's see if where the heck is play? Oh, there it is. All right. Dan, can I share screen again?
You certainly may. And I believe that I haven't turned off that
Yeah.
security.
Okay. So this is something I had down as a 1. And yet I can see people having problems with it because I called a wheel and deal from a 2-face line. The people would do a Ferris wheel, but in a beginner class, I wouldn't think there'd be a problem to it.
I think only your plus and advanced dancers that have trouble with that because they haven't heard it in such a long time.
Yeah. Just a head square through, swing through, just a normal plain old vanilla, and boys run, couples circulate. Here's the tough part, wheel and deal, but it shouldn't be for class because we just taught it. Right and left through, swing through, boys run again, your Ferris wheel, and then the center is just square through 3. That's what I was calling a 1. But I should go back and see what. Oh, so we were going to talk about the 3.5s, huh? Sequence 7. Let me go back and find sequence 7.
It might have been the one that had the wheel and deal from the different sex arrangement.
No, it's one I'm looking for, ones that I haven't done yet.
Oh.
14, 15. Let's see. Here we go. Copy that, zoom back out, go back to terminations. Where'd that go?
You know, something that just well, the new callers will eventually, if they haven't already noticed this, they'll notice it the hard way. Is that even though you go in with a well-developed, a well-thought-out idea of this is how hard this thing is I'm about to call, and you're calling along merrily, and maybe you think it's not hard, there's always the chance that you can be surprised, and that something that, gosh, you didn't think that was hard at all, and you can't think of any good reason why it should be hard, just because of the particular floor that you've got that night, and just what those guys in particular are used to. And I'm thinking of Don's example of the earlier sequence with the used to tag the line to change the 2-face line from just boys on the end to boys in the middle or something, and then doing a wheel and deal, and thinking that might be a little bit hard. And I would think it shouldn't be really. There's a slight chance that somebody will screw that up, but I wouldn't think that's real hard. But you know, on the other hand, if I was out calling and I called that and they broke down, I wouldn't be shocked. It wouldn't shock me, because there was still that little slight possibility. And if the particular floor, they just never ever did that ever, then I mean that could be a little hard for them.
The easy part of that, Chris, was that I did a what am I trying to say? I went from half sashay to normal, so the wheel and deal wasn't bad. If instead I'd gone from normal couples to half sashayed and the wheel and deal, it would have been more difficult. So I did that to straighten out a half sashayed thing.
Right.
So,
So in case the newbies didn't totally pick up on what you're saying, what you're saying is that you're putting them back into the familiar situation that they want to be in.
yeah.
And that adds to the that greatly adds to the easiness.
Am I still sharing file?
Yeah, you're fine.
Yes.
I wish I were fine. Hang on. Excuse me.
COVID.
Should have used the cough button. No, it's not. It's starting up here. It's not down here. So, Dan, are you ready to tally some votes? People are ready to vote. And I'm giving you a hint. I call this a 3.5. But so let's start with a head spin the top. The centers pass through and swing through. Girls run. We have half sashayed lines. Pass through, tag the line and face in. We have normal couples, right and left through. Flutter wheel, because I think I'm about to try and resolve. Spin the top from here, they're going to have troubles with. Turn through, and lo and behold, there's our corner. I hope.
I would think they'd have more trouble with that very first call than the second spin the top.
Yeah. Put your numbers down. Don't let my 3.5 influence you.
I gave it a 3 just because of both of those spin the tops for the same reason. And I agree with Mel that the first one is unless they've ever seen that, like, you know, I could work them into that pretty quickly during the evening. But if I just walked in, you know, hi, my name's Chris, head spin the top, boom. That'd be
Who are the heads? Shouldn't you say 1 and 3?
Yeah, really. All the odd numbered couples spin the top.
Yeah.
I think it'll throw them off the first time, but then the second time you call it, they'll probably catch it right then.
Well, I think what's going to be more difficult about the second one, personally, is, let's see if I can go back to that. Oh, I guess I could do it. The second one starts from when I have the first one, I've got facing couples and just the two working in the middle. People are more used to doing a spin the top from half sashayed couples because they've done a swing through before it. And when I do it from facing lines, these guys might get the hint that they want to do it with each other instead of, you know, when they were just in the center, I think they could grab it better. But when they're trying to figure out, I got to do it on this side and I've got to do it on this side, whereas I'm used to doing it half sachet, that one might have been a little bit more difficult. I'm just guessing.
I didn't look at it that way because your preceding call is a flutter wheel.
Yeah.
That's that dynamic up between those two couples specifically. The one thing that we're not really actually addressing in here is how you're, like, if you look at calling this hold, I would say that's a 4. And for me, it's a 4. I put it about a 3.5, but I put it a 4 only because you start with head spin the top. Now you could easily mitigate that with, you know, your first time heads do a do-si-do, make an ocean wave, spin the top. Now they know that they're going to be doing that. And the next time heads step to a wave, spin the top, and then head spin the top, you're eliminating that that hesitation just by preparing the dancers. And I know you do that. You always let the dancers win. But to look at it cold, and this is what I was thinking was the big thing. When you look at it just cold, for me, that's difficult. But then how, not only we're analyzing, but how do we mitigate those difficulties in the situation with a prompter or whatever is the next part of this exercise.
That's a good point. I mean, there's a lot of, what do I want to do? Stop these guys. One of the things, I was surprised, Chris, when you say that heads swing through would be a problem.
Yeah, but heads come in the middle and swing through, not as much of a problem. The thing is, they're not used to seeing a spin the top. Well, either one, spin the top or swing through. They're not used to seeing that that orientation of an ocean wave working with each other. They're not used to that at the beginning of a sequence. But if you say heads come in the middle, and now they're much more like they are in their usual 8 chain through position. They can see there's another couple there, and then you tell them to do it. Then they'll probably get it.
Be interesting to do a session on helper words. What ones help and what ones confuse. I happen to like the module, Chris, of head, swing through, spin the top, extend, and you're in a 0 box, normal waves, 0 box step to a wave.
You know why I'm so sensitive about the heads do anything other than you know, square through, touch a quarter, or pass the ocean or whatever.
Because you have troubles dancing it. No, I'm sorry.
I've never figured out. No. It's because not that long ago at New England Convention, we'll use the word big, regional convention up in the Northeast United States. It was not that long ago that a friend of mine who was a new caller went in some random plus hall and indeed, and he's in there. He's trying to make a good impression and whatever. You know, mostly he's used to calling to his friends from Tech Squares. So he has no clue what the real world is like. And he goes in there and he goes, you know, bow to the partner, quarter 2, the head, spin the top, and just he dropped the entire hall. and that was his first impression with those guys.
And I think that's probably one of the most interesting comments, in that head spin the top or head swing through is not difficult. It's probably a 1 or maybe a 2 in difficulty as far as the choreographic flow and the movement goes. What's difficult about it is the fact that it is very, very seldom used as an introduction to a sequence or an introduction to a flow. And it's just because it is so rarely used, that's what makes it difficult.
Yeah, that and the fact that they have to, well, this is sort of goes along with, you know, it's just unusual to them, is that they have to come in the middle first. It's really 2 calls. It's heads come in the middle and spin the top, and so not telling them come in the middle, but just saying spin the top. They have to. There's actually something to them coming in the middle and then recognizing that they're in a very familiar formation now, as opposed to those head couples. They're way over there and spin the what now? What?
Yeah, well, the difference is head step in creates a dancer anticipation of something that's different. It's like turning on a light switch. Head spin the top, there's the light switch is off and you're dancing in the dark. Head step in, you've turned the lights on. Now you can see what you're doing because you're expecting something different.
Yeah.
Furthermore, if you want to really workshop and get them through that, you not only turn the lights on, put a spotlight, heads go forward, do a do-si-do, full around, make a wave, and then spin the top.
Yeah.
That'll get Dan.
And the flow of all of those things, like in that little module that you were saying, it is, as Mel said, of course, the flow is just great. It's nice.
And spin the head, spin the top, turn through, equivalent to a lead to the right is nice, but you know. Mel, Dan, did you get a tally on the last one? Did enough people vote?
We got a few. 3.6 standard deviation of 0.55. Basically 3s and 4s.
Okay, which is, I couldn't decide between the two, and I chided myself for going to a scale of 10 instead of 5. But I had two sequences like that, so we're in agreement. I'm going to stop sharing my file and look at your smiling faces again. Any other thoughts, comments, suggestions, complaints?
No, just
nothing.
These are the types of activities. Like, we have done a lot of choreographic sessions, a lot of programming sessions, a lot of introductory sessions at a level where we've taken it from the caller school, fast-track introduction, take it home and work on it, to, you know, a 40-minute presentation to digest with a lot of discussion, which is an advantage that you never get. But now is the time for these types of exercises to actually look at what it is we have done over the last period of time. When we talk of degree of difficulty like this, why it is difficult at that nth level. And I think we're in a great venue. And I think definitely these choreographic sequencing, modular use, all those need that practical application. So well done. This is something that's long overdue, not only just for new callers, but for experienced callers to look at it as well. So I'd like to see more of it.
Yeah, I again, as Dan knows, I try very hard to come up with programs that'll be good for experienced and new callers alike, which is kind of a stretch sometime, but I thought this might be one, and it would be interesting to somehow put this type of thing in conjunction with one of the theoretical ones like Betsy and many others have done at Caller Lab. And we'll go through this, and then one of them will say, well, we talked about this, and this is why this is, and that's why that. But, sometime when we've got 5 hours to kill, it could take a long time.
Before.
Huh?
What was the longest we had here, Dan? 11 hours or something?
Here? Oh my God. Yolanda, unmute yourself. Or are you saying goodbye? So from now on, if you're saying goodbye, use your right hand. If you want to speak, raise your left. No, never mind.
Is that right hand looking at you or right hand on the screen?
One of the things I like about what are we on? Zoom, is that you can get a mirror image of yourself if you want. Because I'm used to looking at myself in the mirror, and when I do this, my hand goes the wrong way. Yeah, never mind. Let's make it harder. Yeah, we know the dancers don't know the left hand from the right hand anyway, so. Again, Yolanda, did you have something to say, or were you just waving? No, okay.
Are you going to be doing a follow-up on these, Don, a couple of them? Because if not, I definitely would love to have you over.
I don't see why we shouldn't, because we've had enough. We've gone pretty well with it, and I think it'd be interesting to do more. There's enough interest. I don't want to do it next week.
No.
And I think we could run one with you, one or two with you, even the same way, and not overlap. First of all, different people commenting, and second of all, different sequences. So I don't see any harm in, you can program me whenever you want, and I'll see if I can come up with something parallel.
Yeah.
All right. See you later, team.
I think that's a good idea, John. We're running.
Bye. All right.
Bye.
I want to come up, or have somebody come up with something we can do with. I'm still missing the Jeopardy TikTok music for the while we're voting, but as soon as I said that, then I'm like, oh yeah, then we have our double Jeopardy categories: wheeling, evil lefty, deucey. All answers will have the word deucey once and a half, and the who now. Don, you have control of the board.
Yeah, actually, as I say, I've tried presenting this many different ways. The first time I tried, I actually had a panel of 3 or 4 or 5 people at our Callers Association, and I gave them cards with 1s and 2s and 3s, and like the Olympics, they would hold up the score they thought for what the sequence was, but that turned out to be not very successful. But I'm still open to suggestions on what we're doing. Background music at the right time. We'll have to leave that for Dan, but I hope we don't use copyrighted game show stuff.
I think isn't somebody playing it? I think I hear it.
Is that you, Steve? I see a big grin on your face. No.
Somebody was playing it. I heard it.
I think I'm out of things to say, so I'm going to leave. If you guys want to carry on, I see Dan has left already, but he's left the thing on. This has been more fun than I thought it would be. Nah, they all turn out to be fun. And I will try to proofread things even better. But guys, I got to go.
Yeah, I got to head out as well. My wife is just getting out of bed. Got to let the chickens out, and the daughter's coming up so they can go to Canberra today. And I got a session at 9, so I'll see you all later.
Take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Don. That was lots of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.
double tap to pick